Supercharged 50cc two-stroke engine. Plan is to start testing it under load in this video and hopefully get some numbers. I need to fix a couple of issues first. Carb is leaking under pressure and the slide is sticking. I've got fixes for both. I'll pull this off and meet you at the bench. First problem, the carb is leaking here. If we're lucky, it's from the choke passage. I didn't completely seal it when I put in that insert. So that's what we're gonna do first. Completely seal the choke passage. And also clean up the area around the insert here. If that doesn't help, we'll have to split the carb. Probably some sealant slash glue in here. It could be difficult to pull apart. Could also be difficult to realign for assembly. Hopefully it's just from that air passage for the choke. Not much material between it and the outside here. I'm putting acetone on my finger. Makes smoothing out epoxy really easy. The transition between the carb and the insert is much smoother now. And I've plugged that choke air passage. And hopefully the carb won't leak anymore. On to fixing the sticking slide. I mentioned in the previous episode that I had to figure out something for that sticking slide. Maybe a push-pull configuration or something. And that's exactly what I'm gonna do. Spent lots of time searching, trying to find a somewhat local supplier of push-pull cables. Then I realized a local boat shop had shelves upon shelves of this stuff. Meant for throttle control and such on small boats. All we have to do now is find a neat way to mount this to this and mount this to this. I've got to make sure it's not over constrained. The slide is already pretty tight in there. You have to make the connection between the slide and the connection between this and that top hat forgiving so it won't bind. Well, that's it then. On to working on something else. Picking stuff up off the floor is beneath me now. I'm a lord. You can become a lord and have stuff being beneath you too, thanks to Established Titles. Established Titles is a fun and novel way to preserve the woodlands of Scotland while helping global reforestation efforts. Based on a historic Scottish custom where landowners are referred to as lairds or lords or lady in English. Title packs give you at least 1 square foot of dedicated land with a unique plot number on a private estate in Edelston, Scotland, and an official certificate with a crest. Established Titles plant a tree with every order and supports global charities, 1 tree planted and trees for future. You could officially include the title Lord or Lady on your plane tickets, credit card, etc. First 200 people purchasing a title through my link will effectively be next to my plot, within walking distance. Our own two-stroke stuffing kingdom. Makes an amazing last-minute gift. Established Titles is actually running a massive Black Friday sale now, and you'll get an additional 10% off if you use the code Twostroke.se. Go to establishedtitles.com/twostrokestuffing to collect your gifts now and help support the channel. Thank you, Established Titles. I was going to make something custom, but this is Imperial and I haven't got taps for Imperial threads. Well, just a few and not this size. I'm not sure if this tubing retention system is good enough, but we'll see. Made a cable guide out of a cutting board up here, so this cable won't be flapping around when the engine starts vibrating. We're pretty much ready to go now. I'll re-hook up all the hoses and stuff, and we'll see how it behaves. I've only watched the footage from the other camera on the camera screen. I can't tell if the carb is leaking still. Even with the push-pull throttle, I know the slide isn't sticking. It still acts like the slide is sticking somewhat. Slow to go down in rev. It might just be how things work with a carb like this and blow through. You might have noticed it suddenly wouldn't rev anymore. And that was a stupid human error, I think. I forgot about the sliding reed valve and I never opened it when I was revving the engine. And I think maybe we broke the reed. I was wondering why it behaved worse now than last time. But well, that's because I forgot to open that reed valve. That tiny little reed valve. Let's pull the carb and see if my theory is correct. Yep. There's no reed valve there. Let's hope that little screw holding the reed valve in place is still there. Otherwise we have bigger problems than a broken reed. I haven't flipped it around and looked at it yet. Pause the video here and write a comment if you think that screw is missing or not. Okay. Whew. It's still there. Actually, I don't think it's possible for it to come out. That slot is too shallow. I'll have to take this apart and replace that reed valve. And then we're back in business. I think it's wise to hook up that servo opening system though, to prevent this from happening again. I've shown you this in an earlier episode. It was meant for this valve, though without the reed in there. My Vtec ignition unit can control servos, but not servos like these with 3 wires. Meant to control the 4-wire variety, those with a pot inside and a wiper. I'll have to hook up an Arduino control circuit and have the Vtec control that. I've hooked up the servo to a voltage regulator and an Arduino micro, and I've got this push button. And I've written a simple little program which moves the servo from 0 to 100 degrees when I push that button. Now I just need to replace this push button with the Vtec unit. I struggled a lot yesterday trying to de-pin this plug. It's a JAE MX23, I think. I managed to get one of them out of there eventually. And then I realized the problem. I assumed the pins had some kind of a tab that needed to be pushed down to get them out of there. Actually, they're just solid, and you have to deflect the plastic material in the connector. I'll show you how I do it. If I hadn't cut these wires short, it would have been much easier. I went out there after hours yesterday and de-pinned the whole thing. I was kind of in the zone. I didn't bring the camera though, but I left one. My system is I grab that wire stub with these surgical tongs, can't remember the name. I use a needle inserted at an angle and I slide it along the pin until I hit something. And then I force the needle into the plastic and bend upwards. And the pin is free. Probably not the best explanation. That heat shrink is taking up too much space. You could probably hear that tiny click. So now it's connected to pin 6. The other end is connected to ground. I'm gonna hook this up to the computer and test the output. It should go low when it's switched on. I've got this multimeter connected up to the output, and I've got it set in the software to engage at 8,000 RPM and then stay engaged at higher RPM. I've got one end hooked up to ground and one end hooked up to that sensor. When I push the button, it should beep. There should be conductivity between ground and the output. Perfect. Let's solder up the control circuit and see if the whole system works. Some of you have seen arcs around my ignition coil. It's actually this stuff, reflecting light. I hot glued in the wires into the connector, keep them secure. So it's not arcs, it's strands of hot glue, reflecting light, flapping in the breeze. Let's see if it works. Turning on Vtec output. Perfect. Perfect. Ready for testing. I've added a little flag here to make it easier to see when that valve opens. We might have to adjust the opening position in the RPM range. I have it set to 8,000 RPM now. I think that's around where the blower starts forcing enough air into the engine so that it can run without the reed valve. We'll see. I just needed to pause for a minute there and celebrate how well my Vtec is working. Because there probably won't be long until the next problem presents itself. Let's hook up the retarder and see how it behaves under load. I can see when that power jet sets in, it gets far too much fuel. I can't open the throttle to where this sets in. That might change under higher load. Let's try pinching this power jet and see what happens. Like that. Now let's see how it behaves. I think our problem now is that alcohol metering rod is delivering far too much fuel at higher throttle openings. And when the slide uncovers that main power jet, we're getting into trouble. I think we should try switching out the alcohol metering rod for the richest of the gas metering rods. Then open up the 2 additional power jets I added to the carb and start adjusting down. I still haven't watched the footage from the other camera, but it's apparent the carb is still leaking a lot, seeping out of the casting on the other side. We'll need to split the carb and fix it. I'm switching the alcohol rod out for an 18-3, which is a really rich gas rod. Linear metering rod installed, and now I'm opening up these power jets again. We know the carb is leaking still, there's no point in filming it from the other side. I'm setting up this camera to monitor the blow-off valve, see if anything is going on in there. Linear metering rod installed, let's see how it behaves, if I can give it full throttle without it dying. Well, that was anticlimactic. I'm wondering, the rod I installed was a 18-3. If that first number, which is the high throttle opening number, doesn't affect the second number, which is the low throttle opening number, then that rod is no richer than the 2-3 rod, which I started out with, which I know is far too lean. I've got a 9-4 rod. I'm gonna do some measurements on these rods and see. I've set up a stop here to measure in roughly the position where the slide is almost closed. 50 millimeters roughly. Zeroing on the alcohol metering rod. 50 millimeters. Now let's take a reading of the 2-3 needle, which we know is far too lean. That's 0.15 millimeters thicker. Now let's measure an 8-3 needle. So this should be much richer at high throttle openings, but the same at low throttle openings. Let's see if that high throttle opening number bleeds over to the low number. A tiny bit, but not much. Let's try this 5-4 needle. Should be richer. So that's about 0.06 millimeters richer than the 2-3 needle. Back with the alcohol needle. Let's see how much less stick out we will need with the -4 needle to reach the same number, and see if that's doable with a -4 needle / metering rod, because -4 is the richest at low throttle openings I've got. That's pretty much it. 47 millimeters. And that's not enough. Then that rod will jump out of the hole at full throttle, which and jam. Not a great idea. At 48, it is a little bit leaner. I'll try adjusting the rod in the carb now to just a smidge over 48, just enough so that it can't jump out, and we should be at least closer to the alcohol needle metering rod. Sticking out 48.5 millimeters. I'm hoping that's enough, that it doesn't jump out of the hole and jam. Absolutely nothing. Some starting fluid to see if it makes a difference, just to make sure it's not ignition related. We need that alcohol rod, even just for starting. None of the other rods are rich enough at low throttle openings. This means we'll have to figure out a way to make the carb leaner at high throttle openings with that alcohol rod. We still got one more power jet circuit to turn off, but not be enough. We could make the bore of the carb larger again. I'm not sure that works in this situation though, because it's not the suction from the engine pulling on the jets, it's the airflow. Let's put the alcohol metering rod back in the carb and set it at a really lean position. Then turn off all the power jets. I'll just thread it into where it seems to be held tightly. Seems to be fine now. 52 millimeters. It's running better and better the less fuel we give it. But now I can't give it less fuel. These lines go to the float bowl vents and a fuel pressure regulator, and they're hooked up to a pitot tube in the intake. And I'm an idiot. Here's an awesome illustration of a carb with a turbo or a centrifugal compressor in front of it. This is the engine side, this is the compressor housing, and this is the carb tube from the float bowl up to the jet, and this is the vent, and that's that pitot tube. It's basically a tube pointing towards the flow. Flow is coming in this direction. This is the float chamber and this is the fluid level. And you can see that tube is connected above the level. Pressurizes the fuel in there from that pitot tube. Had we not used a pitot tube but a tube like this, we would get the static pressure in the intake system. With a pitot tube, You not only get the static pressure, but also the dynamic pressure, the pressure created by flow in this direction. The reason I've installed this pitot tube is that it seems to be common practice in blow-through carb systems with a turbo or a centrifugal compressor. The reason is it makes jetting much easier. The thing is, their engines suck and mine doesn't. Well, at least not as much. Let's pretend the blower isn't there. This is open to atmosphere now. And let's pretend there's no pitot tube here. This is also open to atmosphere. Naturally aspirated, no blower or turbo or anything. A naturally aspirated engine will suck. I know there's not really such a thing as sucking and there's a pressure differential. Doesn't matter in this situation. It sucks. It's creating lower pressure here versus outside of the carb. Draws fuel out of this tube whilst at the same time drawing air in here. But that air flowing over here also draws some fuel with it. Two things causing suck here. It's suck from the engine, the main suck, and there's the smaller suck from air passing over this tube here. Probably because air has to deflect and go a longer way around. The suck on the engine creates much stronger suck here than the air passing over the tube creates. Let's forget about the effect of the air flowing over the tube and just focus on suck. This will create a lower pressure in this tube versus just the flow alone. And this is the reason why all those blow-through turbo and compressor guys run a pitot tube. They have engines that suck. They need the carburetor to be able to transition from hard suck here, sucking on that tube, to hard blow from here, sucking on that tube. Now this is really simplified, but the flow here won't create as much suck as the engine does. I think I said we should pretend this wasn't here anymore. Well, now it's back. Now it's back. There will be a transition between the engine doing the work, sucking, over to the blower or turbocharger, blowing through the carb. That pitot tube will add more pressure down here, pushing on the fuel, make up the difference from the weaker pulling force from the flow over the tube versus the harder sucking force from the engine, making it so that you won't have to change jets halfway into the power band. Now here's the thing, my engine doesn't really suck at all. It has such a huge crankcase volume. Pumping action before the pipe starts working doesn't really do much. Like there's such a large volume, there's the downtime versus the pumping time. It has a really diluted, weak suck. This means we have no suck here. Throughout the whole range, we always have blow. Mostly blow. We don't need a pitot tube to transition from suck to blow because we're already jetted for blow. This will only make the carb far too rich at higher RPM when the blower starts working better and better. Like what's going on now. Like that's what I think is going on now. I'm hoping this made sense. Next time I'm out of fuel. Next time we'll have a new batch of fuel. We'll delete the pitot tube and hopefully we can get it to run better and not overly rich. See you next time.